Hey there, buddy. CFL Jim here with the Week 9 recap coming at you. Let's get into it, shall we? Game number 1, we had the BC Lions head to Winnipeg to take on the Blue Bombers, with the Bombers winning this one 25-0. That's right, I said 0. The BC Lions, of all teams, have produced the first goose egg of the season. Didn't see this one coming. The Bombers' defense, while it's been improving for the last few weeks, I did not expect to see this kind of performance out of them. The defensive front was attacking, demolishing the BC Lions offensive line, getting after Vernon Adams, who was seemingly out of sorts from jump. He just was taking too much time. Things weren't going in a rhythm for him, and he couldn't get anything done. But this offensive performance for BC is what I want to focus on. Abysmal is not a strong enough word to describe just how bad the BC Lions were in this game. The time of possession alone was double for the Bombers than it was for the Lions. And all credit to the Bombers defense, because the Bombers offense, well, it was fine. It was fine, decent. Especially at the end of the game, they were running, but right second quarter even, the Lions defense was just done. They were gassed, and it was just off to the races for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers after that. This was not the kind of game that I saw coming. And I don't know if anyone saw this one coming, okay? Takeaways for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers: good freaking job, boys. You want to see this kind of performance. You want to see this fire in your defense. This is the defense we've seen from the Bombers for the past few years, and if they can kind of get back to this level and be playing at this level consistently week in and week out, this again automatically becomes almost a championship caliber team, because that defense can be so darn good. For the BC Lions, oh boy, boys, I don't know. I just don't know. You gotta just forget this one, right? You just gotta put this one in the back. They might be worried. They might be in a sorts now. They kind of were stumbling going into the bye week, and now they're tripping and falling on their face coming out. I don't know what you do if you're the BC Lions right now. You gotta actually be a little worried. Up next, we had the Montreal Alouettes taking on the Hamilton Tiger Cats, with the Alouettes winning this one 33-16. That Montreal defense, boys, oh, it's a pleasure to watch when they're turning on. And for Hamilton, I mean, you can't really expect two great Bo Levi Mitchell games in a row. You kind of blew your load on Edmonton last week, but it's fine. You're in an okay spot. Davis Alexander took a little bit to get warmed up, but once he's hot, he's slinging that thing all over, and he's just so exciting to watch. I love that, man. Also, just as an aside, this game had maybe the worst call and then worst decision by the command center I may have ever seen in any league of football ever. I'm gonna call it the worst call of the year. I'm gonna put myself out there and just preemptively say that's the worst call of the year. Okay, I think we can all agree on that. But Montreal, your defense is fantastic. Your offense is great. They kind of now have cemented themselves back in that number one spot after losing Cody Fajardo. I was worried. I'll admit I was worried. Hamilton, I told you guys last week, that Elks win was a fluke. This team is still not a good team. They kind of were alive for the first parts of the game, and it felt at some aspects that the refs were trying to help them, but they couldn't do anything. They can't keep up with these top dogs like Montreal. Moving forward for the Alouettes, just keep riding this high. Obviously, if Cody Fajardo is 100%, you put him in no matter what. But you have a great guy right now in Alexander the Great to kind of get you through and that you can feel confident in. And that's a beautiful thing. When you have not just one, but two quarterbacks who you feel like you can win with, you're in a fantastic situation. For the Ticats, you guys stink. I don't know. I'm sorry. You have moments where I believe that you can do things, and then you just bring me back down to the reality that is the Hamilton Tiger Cats are just plain not good. Game number 3, we have the Edmonton Elks versus the Saskatchewan Roughriders, with the Elks winning this one 42-31. Like the fireworks. Sound off the cannon, the Edmonton Elks got their first win of the season. Of course, Tre Ford is behind it. Why he hasn't been starting is a mystery that I think very few of us completely understand. I had investigator Jim actually take a look at this one. Let's see what he has to say. The Edmonton Elks, huh? What an organization. What exactly do they have against Tre Ford, and why hasn't he been starting? This is a mystery that has been plaguing CFL fans since not just the beginning of this year, but since 2023. CFL Jim asked me, investigator Jim, take a look into the matters, and I gotta tell you folks, this rabbit hole goes deeper than I think any of you expected to. So I started my investigation. What did I find? What do I look into first? I look into who controls the Elks. That led me to the board of directors. That led me to the chairman of the board of directors, one Mr. Tom Richards. Now, this man is no joke. Mr. Richards, I believe, may be partaking in some sort of elaborate money laundering scheme. So he works at CIBC Wood Gundy, a bank, a place of finance, and I think Mr. Richards here, old Dick, might be skimming a little off the top and using the Elks to funnel that money. Now, how does he do it, you ask? Simple. The Elks have been a crazy team to just bet them to lose. It's been a very consistent way to not just make a decent amount of money, but to keep the money that you want from being discovered. So say, for instance, the Elks are just bet them to lose against the BC Lions. They're minus 300. Little return, whatever, but little to no risk, because obviously the Elks without Tre Ford are losing that game. It's just not in the cards for Edmonton there. So you put your money in, the Elks lose, obviously, because you're designing them to lose, and then you get your money back, except now it's clean. The only way the Elks are winning these games is with Tre Ford in the starting lineup. What's the best way to keep him out? Sign a veteran presence like McLeod Bethel-Thompson, who people won't question, and get him in town, get him as the starter. Some people would argue that this is just a wild coincidence, bringing McLeod Bethel-Thompson in, the chairman being a person of finance. But if you look into the facts, you will see, as I have, that McLeod Bethel-Thompson was the only logical choice for the Edmonton Elks if they wanted to keep losing. McLeod Bethel-Thompson, before joining the Edmonton Elks, had a career passing yardage in the CFL of 13,261. You line all those up, the numbers you get are 13, 1,000, 2, 160, and 1. What does that mean? First, we have the number 13. 13 is the number of disciples at the Last Supper. This, I think, is important because what does Edmonton want to do? The Jesus figure of Tre Ford, the Canadian savior of this franchise, they want to sabotage him. What better way than that to bring in a Judas? MBT is the Judas that has been sabotaging Tre Ford since he arrived in Edmonton. Next, we have 1,000. I think the number 1,000 symbolizes that McLeod Bethel-Thompson, who is the one in this, is blockading the infinite aura and potential of Tre Ford. All those zeros right behind him. McLeod Bethel-Thompson is the only thing keeping Edmonton from winning. He's the blockade. He's the dam for the river of wins that Tre Ford will bring. Next up, we have the number 2. And that's interesting because the CFL, there's really only 2 quarterbacks. You have your starter, you have the guy making most of the throws, making most of the plays, and then you have your short down quarterback. Tre Ford has been even shoved behind further than that. He just hasn't seen any playing time because the Elks have just kept him as the number 2. They've been pooping on the guy, so to speak. They've been covering Tre Ford in theoretical fecal matter, and that has come to a stop. But why? Up next, though, we have the number 100. 100 divided by the 2 that are ahead of it takes you to the top of the all-time Canadians list, of which I believe Tre Ford will eventually be number 1. But for now, number 2 is one Mr. Terry Fox. Now, Terry Fox, exemplary figure, nothing wrong with him. I couldn't dig up anything on the guy. One time, though, he did try to raise money for cancer by running across Canada. He only made it 5,373 kilometers, which is about a round trip from Edmonton to Quebec. Now, what do they have in Quebec? Syrup. It's the syrup capital of the world for a reason. I think Mr. Richards is deep in the syrup oligarchy that is controlling Canada. He owes them money, and he's trying to get it through illicit means by laundering it through the Edmonton Elks, by betting on them to lose. What's the best way to do that? Keep Tre Ford out of the lineup. Next up, we have the number 60. Now, if you take a Canadian football team with the players, staff, coaches, everything, you have about 60 players. Maybe some of the staff and players are in on it. I don't believe any of the players are in on it because they seem to have a different energy, a different life when Tre Ford comes in. But the coaches, and then we have number 1, probably the most important number out there. Tre Ford is the number 1 player for Edmonton. He's the one that they have been missing. He is the one, the Christ-like figure that the city of Edmonton, the team of the Elks, need to transform them from the losers that they are to the winners that they're supposed to be. So I think the beginning of the end for the Fordless Elks was the firing of head coach Chris Jones, who was had a handshake agreement going with Mr. Richards, and I think he may have been getting a cut too. When they brought in interim coach Jarius Jackson, who I believe is a true Tre Ford believer, or as I've been referring to them, Fordamentalists, being the offensive coordinator, he was obviously closer with Ford. He knew what he was capable of. He knew the power that he could bring to the city of Edmonton, and he wasn't going to wait around long. The best way to get Tre Ford in the lineup, have a terrible showing against the other worst team in the CFL, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, in Week 8. But get Tre Ford in the end, let him look good, and then there's no way that you can't start him in Week 9 without a full-blown riot happening in Edmonton. So what happens? Tre Ford gets the start Week 9, balls out, looks amazing, and then he's set. Edmonton is set. Your savior is here, and you will be led to the promised land. Now, we wait for the true one Canadian to lead this team, the Edmonton Elks, to the potential promised land of the CFL playoffs and perhaps even a Grey Cup. This has been my investigation. Back to you, CFL Jim. Thank you for that, Jim. Now back to this game in particular. The Saskatchewan Roughriders, what surprised me about the Riders in particular was that their defense was getting torched. I get that it's Tre Ford. I get that it's the one true Canadian. But man, the way this defense has been playing, the rest of the season, I expected a little bit of a better effort. Because Shea Patterson didn't even play bad. This Riders offense wasn't even terrible in this game. They just couldn't keep up with Edmonton. Crazy to say, Edmonton leads out at half. The Riders kind of start to come back in the second half. We've seen this story a million times, and then all of a sudden, Edmonton pulls away. Not something I thought I would ever say in 2024. The Elks pulled away, secured the win, and it wasn't even that difficult for them. Holy cow. Also, I just have to mention, the Elks run game was chef's kiss. Absolutely beautiful football. Going forward, Edmonton, you have your guy. Play your guy. This team is like it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, except in the most positive way possible when Tre Ford's in. He's the best option you have. He's lit a fire under the Elks that gives them the life that they need to be a legitimate force in this league. You have to be so hype as an Edmonton fan right now. For the Rough Riders, You've been on a slow but steady decline now for the past like 3 or 4 weeks, and you got to see some progress here. You need a bounce back. You need to find a way to just bounce back. I think if they get a win, maybe get some of the run established again, let this defense rest, you can make some things happen. But I'm losing faith. I'm starting to slowly but surely lose faith, and I don't like that. Game before, we had the Toronto Argonauts taking on the Calgary Stampeders, with the Stamps winning this one 27-23, and there's just one thing I have to say. Fourth quarter collapse. I have seen very few as bad as what the Argonauts displayed in this game. They were up the entire time. They looked like the better team the entire time. And then what do? Absolutely fall apart in the fourth quarter. It was Edmonton-esque for the last rest of this season, if I do say so, insultingly. Sorry, Edmonton, but damn Argos. I talked about the Rough Riders having a steady fall. They've been falling for the last 5 weeks. It's just been miserable for Toronto. Cameron Dukes, for most of the game, looks fine. Falls apart in the fourth quarter. The defense, pretty good to great at points in this game for the first half. In moments in the third quarter, falls apart. How do you do it? How do you do it? Calgary, I don't understand. This is a team I don't get. It's good Jake Maier, bad Jake Maier. This one was a fine Jake Maier. Maybe that means he can also play fine next week. I'm still trying to crack the code of the enigma that is Jake Maier at quarterback. He's a confusing fella. And this kind of moves. This game, probably more than any other, shifts my power rankings quite a bit. So it was a very weird game, and it's hard to evaluate because Toronto looked like the better team and just fell apart. But you don't fall apart if you are the better team, you know? So, takeaways from the game: for the Stampeders, you got the dub. That's all. No one can tell you any different. Take the wins where you can. You're still maybe the benchmark team, and maybe that just tells me that the Toronto Argonauts, as they are right now, aren't a good team. That's maybe what it's telling me right now. That's all I'm saying. For the Argonauts, get it together. Right the ship. You gotta find a way to get back to where you are. And I don't know if it's Dukes, I don't know if it's Arbuckle, I don't know if it's the whole shebang right now in Toronto, but you gotta find something that works, and you gotta find it fast. That'll lead me into my question for you folks out there watching. Do you believe that the Edmonton Elks right now, everyone's talking about them, do you believe that they have a shot to make the playoffs and get a win? Moving into my CFL Jim power rankings for the CFL after week 9 of the CFL by me, CFL Jim, for you, the CFL fan, from the CFL gods who have granted us the viewing pleasure of watching another week of CFL action. I'm going to blast you in the face with some CFL power rankings CFL. At number 9, it's still the Elks. I mean, it's got to, you eventually have to factor in just wins and losses. And the Elks, while they look like a great team at the moment, I still just have the recent history in the back of my head. I gotta put them right here. At number 8, it's the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Again, I've said it week in and week out, just not a good team right now. They're just flat out bad. They had a fluky couple of wins, but I just can't trust in this Hamilton team. At number 7, probably my biggest faller from week 1 to now, it is the Toronto Argonauts. They look legitimately not good at points, and you have a collapse like that, you're gonna fall no matter what. Number 6, I'll have the Calgary Stampeders. I think this is a good spot. They're gonna always hover around that 6 to maybe 5 range. They're gonna be in the 6 to 4 range the entire season, but they're at the 6th spot right now. I think everyone above them you could call a legitimately good team. Everyone below them has been a bad team for at least the majority of the season. At number 5, I'm going to put the Winnipeg Blue Bombers here. This team, while they looked fantastic, they took down who was my number 1 or number 2 team for most of the season in the BC Lions. I still just have to look at the whole body of work and factor in that maybe this team just also lays another egg in their next game. And I got to put them right here at 5. At number 4, it's the Ottawa Red Blacks. This team didn't play this week. They're safe. They keep their spot. They keep on trucking. And you know what? They've got some good wins under their belt. At number 3, I'm going to put the Saskatchewan Roughriders. They also didn't move. Competitive game. It's against Edmonton though, and you fall to Edmonton. You're gonna end up falling eventually. I could have very easily slotted them at 4. At number 2, I'm gonna have the BC Lions here. I get it. They looked abysmal in their game this week, but I'm still looking at the whole body of work, the whole shebang, the whole picture, and BC has been the number 2 team for most of the season. At number 1, it is the Montreal Alouettes. The defense was the offense was and they just And that'll do it for my Week 9 CFL recap. I hope you folks had a very entertaining time. It was a really exciting week, just like most weeks of the CFL. I can't wait to be back here and talk about Week 10. We're into the double digits. It's a long season, and we're almost halfway there. What a time, folks. Soak it in while you can. What a lovely and great time to be alive. Later, buddy.